Hello, friends. Welcome back to my channel. I'm Elliot Parker, and whether you're a writer or a reader or just a lover of words, I invite you to stop what you're doing and join me for a page break. And taking a page break with us today is author Christian Baines, and he's the author of the terrific new book. It is called My Cat's Guide to Online Dating, and it's a terrific book. If you're looking for something to add to your early spring to-be-read pile, this is one you're going to want to put on here, especially if you have cats, if you love cats, if you know someone who has cats, and life is always better with kitty cats. So if you don't have one, get two or three. So if you like cats, you're going to love this book. If you like stories about relationships, if you like a story about someone overcoming a variety of different obstacles and kind of finding himself and finding a new reality through a variety of different circumstances, you're going to love this book. And I can't wait to talk to you about it and to talk with Christian about it today as we get started. But before we take our page break with Christian, just a reminder to like our channel over here. The subscribe button is over here on the right, so please take a moment to do that. Feel free to leave any questions or comments that you have about the episode or about the book or about Christian's work or his career as a writer, and we'll be sure and pass those along to him. We also want to remind you, if you're watching us on Instagram, be sure that you like this interview and also leave us a comment or a question in the comments field, and we'll be sure and pass those along to Christian and address those as they come available. If you're new to the channel, welcome. We're glad to have you. The purpose of our program is to talk about everything going on in the world of books and publishing. That's the inside baseball stuff about agents and publishing and publishers and editors and all of that, but also talking to some outstanding writers who have written some really terrific books, and we have one of those with us today. So welcome to the channel. If this is your first time, welcome back. If you've been with us before at any point in the process of the channel being created and evolving, welcome. We're glad to have you. And I'm so pleased to have Christian Baines with us today to talk to us about his brand new book and take a page break with us today. He describes himself as an awkward nerd turned slightly less awkward novelist. His work includes the paranormal series The Arcadia Trust, the novella Skin, and Puppet Boy, which was a finalist for the 2016 Saints and Sinners Emerging Writer Award. He was born in Australia. He now travels all over the world whenever possible, living, writing, and shivering in Toronto, Canada, and does that on the occasions when he can't find his passport and escapes. Christian, welcome to Page Break. Thanks for taking a page break with us today. Great to have you with us.
Oh, thank you very much for having me and for your kind words. I really have to update that bio, though. I think I've adjusted by this point, so the shivering's kind of subsided.
That was my first question I was going to ask you. So you're from Australia, and we were talking before we started recording that you had a chance to go back to Australia to help promote your book, but also to see your parents who you hadn't seen since the COVID pandemic started. But how did you get from Australia to Canada originally? What brought you to Canada from Australia? Because that's, if you look at a map, that's a long, long way from each other. What brought you to Canada from Australia?
It's a long way geographically, but not really culturally. I don't know. I'd been to North America a few times. I wanted to experience living in a different country while I was still young, and the paperwork was easy enough to do. And I don't know, Canada just kind of worked out for me. So I made good friends here. I found a good job here. And 10 years later, I still consider it home. I'm a citizen of both countries. I love Australia. I miss it quite often. I really missed it when I went home this time. It was my first time since before the pandemic, and spending some time in Sydney, which was hosting World Pride at the time. That was absolutely incredible. They put on a fantastic show, and I just I was reminded of everything that I missed in all the best ways. So yeah, but it's kind of like it's an extreme privilege to feel like you have two homes like that. So I consider myself very fortunate there.
That's awesome. Well, that's great. Glad to have you back on in this hemisphere at least, and glad that you're doing well in Toronto and settled back in, and that you had a chance to see your home country and also your mom and dad too. I know they were excited to see you, I'm sure. But so let's get talking about your book and this terrific book that's got so much going on, and there's just so many layers that I hope we can peel back as many of them and talk about them as we get ready and as we move through this interview today. But we're following a character in the story named Zach, who is formerly an obese teenager. He survives sort of a revenge porn-esque kind of a situation when he's in high school, and we can talk about that in just a second. But his parents try to change him. They homeschool him his last year of high school. They're trying to help him, shake off this homosexuality that he has. They try to bring him closer to Jesus and all of that. And then Zach gets tired of that and decides, once he graduates, he moves far away, and he spends some time in Toronto. He moves to Toronto to start his new life, and he kind of comes out of his shell when he's in Toronto. One of those things that really caught my attention was, you noted in the book when he does make that transition to Toronto that he loses the weight, that he loses about 40 pounds. And I wanted to ask you a little bit about that, and about sort of the fat shaming that we kind of see in our culture. And I think we have a real issue when we look at it in the LGBTQ community. I have a good friend right now who's gay and is going through this problem. He is constantly being fat shamed and told that, no, I won't go out with you, and no, you're ugly because you're a little bit overweight. And I feel like this is something that happens, in our culture. Everybody expects everybody to look like these models on the cover of Men's Fitness magazine or Sports Illustrated swimsuit issue or whatever else. But that really struck me, and I really loved how Zach really felt like a new person. He felt like he could go out and really start meeting people and dating and doing things once he lost that weight. Can you talk a little bit about that, about sort of working that kind of plot line into the story, and your thoughts on what we see going on, especially in the LGBTQ community with this, I don't want to say negative attitude or perspective, but sort of the finger wagging that we see lots of times towards people who may be slightly overweight.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's ridiculous how much attachment we put to between appearance and self-worth. I mean, I'm not even talking about health implications of varying degrees of weight, because that's different for everyone, and lifestyle choices and things like that. But in terms of the way we look, as a community where we are supposedly all about diversity and all about different shapes and manifestations of love, and who we're able to love and how we express that and types of relationships we can have, it's kind of, it feels a bit contradictory that we're so conscious of appearance and so conscious of what weight what body types we consider valid or attractive, or what body types we don't consider valid or attractive. I mean, in terms of Zach's sort of journey, that is, in some ways, it's reflective of my own, because I was quite overweight as a teenager, and then I came out, which was kind of the beginning of finding my confidence a little bit. But it was, yeah, I think if you are overweight and you don't fit that, as you said, that kind of men's health, or this, cute twinkish idea. Like I didn't get twink years. I was too busy trying to shed 40 pounds, which I did. But yeah, it meant my life did not follow this pattern of cute kid leaves behind homophobic past, and comes into their sexual power because at least they've got looks on their side. And for many of us, that doesn't happen. And the idea that is the natural progression, or that it's such a common idea to kind of validate our sexual identity, or our even the idea that we deserve love, is kind of a toxic idea. So I wanted to play around with that. Obviously, Zach's journey is his own with regards to weight loss and feeling attractive and so forth. But it's also, I brought that into it because one of the reasons he agrees to, and I'm not giving away spoilers because it happens in the first 10, 15 pages of the book. One of the reasons his high school bully turns up on his doorstep, does not recognize him, and Zach decides, yes, I am going to have sex with you. Whether it is revenge sex, or whether there is some unspoken part of Zach that says, no, I'm still very attracted to you. You're still the type of man I'm attracted to, and you're still the type of man I feel like I wanted to be when I was getting, a sense of what sexuality was. And it's that kind of toxic self-loathing I wanted to sort of just bring in there. And part of what happens throughout the book is as much Zach navigating that as he is navigating his sexual confidence and what he wants out of relationships and his relationship with family and things like that. It's a very surreal, very over-the-top, shamelessly campy, funny book. But yeah, I wanted to explore some of those, just some of what I've been through. as a gay man underneath all of that.
Yeah, very good. And you mentioned that the guy that tormented him, Alistair Conway is his name, that eventually Zach does hook up with when he goes back to Indiana to house sit for his parents. What happens when Alistair finds out who Zach really is, and what happens in that moment, and what happens to their sort of hookup relationship once Alistair finds out who Zach really is and what he's up to?
Oh, that moment. Well, that moment escalates very, very quickly. Um, Initially, it looks as if Zach has gotten away with, this, whether you want to call it revenge sex or whatever it is he's thinking. I leave that open to interpretation because I don't think he really knows. And he has no intention of telling Alistair who he is or outing himself in that way. But of course, the tension of that moment, things just sort of escalate from there. And Alistair, being, still the self-loathing, closeted guy that he is, responds to Zach the way he's always responded to Zach, which is through threats and, trying to dominate him. And that leads to a very unfortunate accident, which is the kickoff for the entire rest of the book. And it's very difficult to call for help from the traditional authorities when you're still deeply closeted in a small town and everyone knows everyone else. So yeah, therein lies the crux of the overarching plot of the book.
Yeah, very good. And that allows us.
Zach is about to get help with that from a very unlikely source.
Yes, and that led to my next question. That opening there, that accident that you're talking about, allows us to meet Grace Jones, who is Zach's cat, who is awesome, but also unlike any other cat that I know of. And the only other cat I could think that had these kind of characteristics, and I'll have you describe them here in just a second, is Church in Stephen King's Pet Sematary. That was the first thing I thought of when I read your book, and not that Grace Jones is running around, clawing people in the face and bringing about doom and gloom on Zach or his family or anything like that, like Church did in Pet Sematary. But it just kind of reminded me of that there's sort of an ethereal spookiness to Grace Jones. But tell us a little bit about the cat, Zach's relationship to the cat. What is the cat kind of doing, and what is the cat kind of saying to Zach as he tries to move through and move past this accident that happened to Alistair?
Mm-hmm. Well, first of all, I'll introduce you to Grace Jones. If you ever come to one of my readings, you can meet and have your photo taken with Grace Jones. She doesn't bite, at least off the page. So I'm just going to put her down here for a moment. She's been helping me at some of my readings.
A perfect companion. Perfect.
There we go. Absolutely. Absolutely.
I'm so glad we got to see her too. That's awesome.
There we go. Well, I mean, she's the star of the book, so I couldn't leave her out of this. But yeah, what is Grace Jones exactly? She's more than a cat and less than a god. Mm-hmm. Or less than, is she a supernatural entity of some sort? I don't really know. Like, once you can, I sort of have it established in my head as to who she is and what she is and what she represents. But again, I like leaving that sort of open to interpretation. She communicates with Zach through and again, this is not a spoiler, she communicates with Zach through text messaging. She takes Alistair Conway's phone, and then she communicates with Zach through text via the hookup app. So she's obviously fiercely intelligent, and something is going on there. But I want to leave it kind of open. Because cats have had such a significant role in the mythology of so many cultures, and so we've attached them to witches, we've attached them to the Black Death, we've attached them to, they've been revered in Egyptian mythology and Eastern mythology, and one thing or another, cats just recur, and now in our modern age, we're revering them again, and they completely dominate the internet. So it kind of makes sense for a cat to be communicating through an online forum to me. Um, so yeah, as a guide or a familiar, um, Grace Jones makes perfect sense. And then regarding the name, initially it was just a placeholder that I put in, and I don't know. The more I wrote, the more it seemed to fit. To someone who is completely and utterly unique and irreplaceable, and in several in several films or manifestations, does seem like that sort of cat goddess effect.
Mm-hmm. And I love how she reminds Zach at moments throughout the book that she's worthy of all this adoration and she's
Oh,
worthy
sure, of
of all of
course.
this special treatment, and yes, she should be treated like this ethereal goddess like creature that she is. I love that because I often wonder, I have two cats, and I often wonder if they would tell me the opinion of themselves, if they wouldn't say the exact same thing, that yes, we're so worthy of all the attention, love, and spoiling that you give us.
Well, I think if they're of the opinion they don't have to. Like, you should just know that's their place in the world. That's your place in the world. So yeah,
Yes.
that's kind of how I approached Grace's relationship with Zach.
That's terrific. And I've often wondered myself, I've often thought, in a next life, I would love to come back as a cat, but I wouldn't be one of my cats. I would be one of these cats that's, living in the dumpster and having rocks thrown at it by the neighborhood kids and that kind of thing. That would be me. I wouldn't get to come back as my pampered cats that, live a better life than I do. So, but anyway, that's an aside. Grace Jones is wonderful. And I often kind of think about when I was reading over this weekend some of the conversations and kind of the text conversations that she has. She's kind of almost like the other side of Zach's consciousness in a way. There are moments where I could picture this in my mind, them having this conversation, and she is telling him something that he probably deep down knows himself, but has denied it or pushed it aside. But Grace brings it to the forefront. Was that a goal that you were having there in these conversations between the two, for her to serve sort of like not only this goddess like role, but kind of be the other part of his personality or his spirit, to where she's able to say the things that he probably knows, but for whatever reason doesn't accept or doesn't want to pay attention to.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, she's effectively acting as his guide throughout the story, and for that to manifest, she needs to be expressing certain levels of truth, even if they're truths that he already knows. She obviously has her own agenda and her own reasons for asking him to do some of the things he does, which I won't spoil in this interview. But yeah, I mean, she's definitely that manifestation of, you came here to shed shame, so just there is no room for shame in this scenario. There's no room for shame in your life anymore. You spent 20 years of it living in that shadow. Now, sort of, I'm gonna walk you through this sort of liberation. And most of us, of course, are, let alone a supernatural familiar. Most of us, we either have some sort of guide or mentor who walk us through that as queer people, or we kind of figure it out on our own and make a hell of a lot of mistakes on the way. So yeah, that's the kind of role that she plays.
We are speaking with Canadian author Christian Baines here today. The title of the book we've been talking about is My Cat's Guide to Online Dating, and we've been talking a lot about Zach and his relationship with the cat. There's Zach, and there's Grace Jones over there. We've been talking a lot about their relationship, and we'll come back to that in just a second. But before we get to that, it's time to put Christian on our author hot seat, and this is where we have a set of rapid-fire questions that we're going to ask you, Christian, just to let our audience get to know a little bit more about you. Some of these are writer-related questions, and some of these are just fun questions to help our audience get a better understanding of who you are as a person. So are you ready?
I may lie, but go ahead.
Okay, you're perfectly welcome to do so, and no one would know the difference if you did. So let me start with this one. What is something people get wrong about Canada and or Australia?
Ooh, that is a good question to start with.
It could be a stereotype or sort of a sort of a cultural urban legend that probably is not true, that's been passed around for so long that it's
I
just sort
think
of ingrained in people's conscience.
I think it's, and no one gets this more wrong than Canadians or Australians themselves, the idea that we're provincial,
Hmm.
that we are culturally secondary to the US and the UK somehow, like our artists aren't as good. That is absolute, yeah. Um, that is absolute nonsense, and I've seen it manifest in Australia. I've seen it manifest in Canada. It's like they don't take their neither country really takes its creatives seriously until they make it in the UK or the US. Sadly, um, and then they're all there's this keenness to kind of claim them as our own when we could have just supported them in the first place and made the journey a whole lot easier and kind of built up our own identity and our own industry. So that's the idea that neither country is culturally powerful or can hold its own is something people get very, very wrong.
Very good. Very well said. Very well said. So, what's your favorite food?
My favorite food. Oh, I'm a traveler and I absolutely go around to eat. So I will try whatever is special to whatever region I'm in. Big fan of Thai food, big fan of Italian food in just about any form.
Very good. Very good. So, a Friday night at home by yourself after you've had a long, exhausting week, what does that look like?
Um, hmm. Probably looks like an hour or so reading, red wine, um, well, any sort of wine really. Um, and yeah, I will probably just catch up on shows over dinner, and then watch a movie or two. If it's an exhausting week, then yeah, I'm the kind of person, I think, like a lot of writers, I draw energy from being in my own company. So yeah,
Very good. Very good. What's your favorite color?
purple.
Okay. Do you have cats?
I do not, other than Grace Jones that I just showed you, and I have a few more like her. But yeah, no, we actually borrow our neighbor's cat. He comes around every couple of days or so, and so we get all the cuddles and none of the responsibility. It's great.
Oh, that's perfect. That's perfect. What do you love about cats?
I like the fact that there are such independent spirits, very affectionate, but always on their own terms. I feel like I've always understood them in that way. Um, so yeah, and I feel like they're commonly misunderstood. This idea that cats don't like you is again nonsense. Cats do like humans. It's just that it is on their own terms. Um, and yeah, it's something I've always sort of empathized with, and kind of as a as a queer person and a little bit of an outsider, I think that's part of why cats have sort of taken over complete internet culture. Aside from the cuteness factor, it's a fact that there's a resonance with with us if we're feeling isolated, or in online communities or whatever. There's just a connection that we see with the way cats think and the way they behave.
Very good. Very good. So, last hot seat question. What's a book you read recently that you just loved?
Okay, book I read recently that I loved is, and I'm going to make sure I get the title of this right, but it is Proud Pink Sky. Yes, by Redfern and John Barrett, and it is a sci-fi. I don't want to say complete dystopia, but like a true speculative alternate Berlin, in which Berlin ceded from the rest of Germany and became the world's first and only all queer state. And there are different parts of the city for different manifestations of queerdom, and it's such a wonderful way of exploring how divided we can get in the queer community, in terms of like cis gay men and cis lesbians, trans exclusionary feminists, trans people, intersex, bisexual, or what have you. All of these cultures have their own regions, have their own sections of Berlin that they dominate. So it's just a very fun, very interesting and thought-provoking way to explore that.
Very good. Very good. Well, thanks, Christian, for being on the hot seat. We'll put you off the hot seat now and go back to talking about your terrific new book. It is called My Cat's Guide to Online Dating. Just a terrific read. There's just so much going on in this book. It's funny. It's memorable. There's moments that you'll just laugh. There's moments that you'll really kind of pause and think, well, yeah, I can see how that and why this would happen and why Zach would feel this way. It's a terrific book. And I wanted to ask you, we were talking about Zach and Grace Jones a moment ago. I wanted to ask you a little bit about Zach's sort of hookup. So we talked about the Alistair hookup, which kind of starts everything off when he comes back to Indiana, but he kind of goes through a series of other hookups sort of post Alistair. And it's really interesting as he starts meeting different men and having sexual relations with them. It starts out kind of awkward or not good from Zach's perspective, but then it sort of gets a little bit better the next time, and a little bit better the next time, and a little bit better the next time. Can you talk about that sort of subplot that runs through, and what is Zach learning about love and about relationships and about himself, even as he continues to kind of hook up with different guys as he goes along?
Yeah, well, that's kind of the core of the book, right? It's basically, Zach, as he meets each new guy that he sort of connects with, he takes something a little bit. There's no such thing as a no conflict, as a no strings hookup in this book. It does not happen. Nothing is straightforward. But he takes a little something from each encounter that teaches him something about himself, without sort of being earnest or preachy, of course, because that is death in fiction. But yeah, I mean, at first, of course, he's completely incredulous with the idea that he should still be hooking up with guys after this disaster has happened with the first one. But Grace Jones is insistent, and she has her reasons for that. And yeah, it's really, this is the summer of Zach's self-discovery. He has just come out of a bad relationship, his first relationship, and he is determined to, grow from that and evolve from that. And Grace Jones is supportive of that goal. So that's what ends up going on through these other 5 hookups that take place throughout the book, and one in particular that he connects with.
Yeah, and I love that moment. I love that moment where Zach kind of looked at it differently, felt differently after it was over. There was just kind of I don't know, a great moment there when he had the last hookup that I really loved, and I thought it really brought Zach's story kind of full circle in that last hookup. And we won't say too much more about it. We don't want to spoil too much more there, but it's worth getting to that very last one, because it is meaningful and powerful for Zach when he gets to the end. So we talked, Christian, about this book. You're also the author of the paranormal series, the Arcadia Trust, the novella Skin, the novella Puppet Boy. In terms of writing this book, how was writing this kind of a story different or similar to the other books that you've written? And what were some of the challenges as you were putting this book together that you found yourself in that maybe did not apply to the other books that you've published?
Oh, well, this one was totally different. And it's my first time earnestly writing a humorous book. There's humor in the Arcadia Trust books. There's humor in Puppet Boy, which is quite dark. Skin, there's not really a lot of humor in Skin. There's a little bit there, but not very much at all. But this was my first time having to be conscious of, okay, going to get a laugh every few pages, or at least structure it so that there's this nice, through of comedy that basically sells the absurdity and the surrealism. So it was a different approach. Also, the way the book is structured, each of the hookups is essentially its own chapter, and in many ways its own short story. And I do not write short stories. I don't even read a whole lot of short stories outside of my friends' collections, if I'm honest, which is kind of unusual for somebody who really likes horror, given how pervasive short stories are in that genre. But it is what it is. So yeah, it was a very different experience for me writing this one. A lot of fun though. A lot of I've forgotten just how much I enjoy writing comedy, and some of the humorous aspects in the Arcadia books are some of my favorite scenes in there. I don't know if I could write just sort of absurd comedy with no sort of substance under it, and I don't know. I always keep intending to write a book with no sort of horror element, no sort of like nothing disturbing about it. And I always seem to end up drifting into those sort of territories. But that's part of what my books are, and that's part of who we are as human beings. And that's the way I sort of manifest some of the difficulties that have shaped the person I am. And that's what it is, and that's what people have come to sort of expect from my books. So, but in terms of this one, I really wanted people to have a good time and have a laugh above all else. So, hopefully, it gives that.
Yes, you have succeeded there and then some. It's a terrific book, and I just loved it. And I know our readers and our audience will certainly love it as well. So as we finish up with you, Christian, if anybody wants to get in contact with you to sort of follow what you're up to, find out more about your previous books, find out more about your brand new book, My Cat's Guide to Online Dating, how can they sort of follow you and keep up with you? And then where can they get copies of the book?
Well, you can find me on all the social media outlets. My website is simply my name, christianbaines.com. You can also find me on Goodreads. You can find me on Instagram or Twitter, which is xtianbaines.com. Sorry, at xtianbaines. So XTIAN Baines. And I'm I have an author page on Facebook as well. So.
Very good.
And through you can also sign up to my newsletter on my website, where I announce all upcoming events that I'm at, upcoming releases. I do flash interviews with other authors. I do movie, book, and music recommendations. So yeah, there's a few ways to get in touch and sort of keep up with what's going on with me.
Fantastic. Christian Baines has been our guest here, taking a page break with us today, and he is the author of the terrific new book, My Cat's Guide to Online Dating. You're absolutely going to love this, folks. Please be sure that you add this to your to-be-read pile if you haven't read it already. You won't be disappointed. It's wonderfully written, wonderfully told. So much going on here, so many emotions that you'll experience as you read the book, but you'll be very satisfied when you get to the last page and close that back cover. So, Christian, congratulations on the book. Thanks so much for taking a page break with us today. We really appreciate it.
Oh, well, thank you so much for having me and for your insightful questions and your kind words about the book as well. So.
My pleasure. A reminder, please like the subscribe button over here. If you're not a follower of the channel or a subscriber to the channel, be sure to leave us some comments and questions in those comments fields below. If you're following us on Instagram, be sure you like us there and also ask any comments or questions, and we'll be sure to send them along to Christian. And there she is. There's Grace Jones saying goodbye to us. Hello, Grace. We were just talking about you. Cats are also very good about knowing if you're talking about them too. If you don't have cats, that they know if you're talking about them. So I'm glad she made an appearance before
Camera holler.
Fantastic. All right, folks, stay well. See you someplace soon, I hope, and we'll be back soon with another page break. Stay with us.